All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Stay Fearless, the Fearless Sports Performance Podcast. Today we are joined by Alan Dennis. Alan played ball at Loyola University New Orleans, where he etched his name all over the Loyola record books with all kinds of accolades. Those accolades include first in hits all time, first in home runs all time, first in RBIs all time, first in runs all time, first in doubles all time, second in triples all time, first in home runs single season. He also racked up multiple Gold Glove awards, both at first base and third base, and first team all-conference selections. Now, Alan is on to his next feat as he takes on medical school. Alan is a natural leader and a relentless worker, and one of the best humans and friends I've ever known. Alan, I couldn't be more excited to have you on and hear the insights you have for our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
It's going to be a blast, man. So we'll kind of jump into it. Obviously, you had an incredible career at Loyola. And I would even go as far to say that you probably put together the best career in Loyola baseball history. Tell me about your college baseball experience, your routines, your mindset, and what made you so successful.
Yeah, so our experience, I guess, with Loyola and with baseball was very different and had different phases. So like what we knew and what we did and how the culture was early on was obviously very different from when we left it. I feel like that's all you can really ask for too, is to have like leave your mark on a program and have it better than when you came in.
Definitely.
Thinking back on it, like when I came in as a freshman, I was a baby, like a child, like compared to when I left. Like mindset, my routine, like what I did, everything. There was, I guess I'll kind of jump into this. There was one moment when Kennedy was there. I think it was either his first or second year that kind of changed like my mindset and my routine. Because before, like I worked hard, but I didn't work hard to compete. I was very like focused on like little details of my swing, like filming my swing, but not really applying that to like on the field and how to compete. And I was in the cage and I was hitting and like smashing balls, like looking at exit velos, like smashed like three balls 100 miles an hour in a row and then like rolled one over. And I like kind of stepped out and like shook my head and I was like, oh, something doesn't like feel right. And it was like the first and like only time he ever like got on me and like dug into me. And he's like, dude, like, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like, I just watched you hit three balls up the middle, 100 miles an hour. Like, what do you mean you don't feel good? I was like, I don't know, something's just off. And then he was like, he got into kind of like, it's not about a feel. He's like, it doesn't matter how you feel. You still have to go out and compete each day. He's like, it's like, I'll take you feeling 30% over anybody else 100%. And he kind of said that, and something like clicked in my head that day of like, okay, it's not about how I feel. It's knowing how to compete with like what I have. So like I could show up to the field and feel like trash, but I still got to go out there and have three or four at bats against a pitcher. So it's like, how do you? Because everybody can go out there and hit when they feel great. Like you feel good, the ball looks like a beach ball. It's like those are the easy days. But like, how do you go out there when you don't have your best stuff and still compete, have a good day, and help your team win? And then another piece of that too was I remember he told me you're not clutch. And it was like I kind of like argued with him a little bit and I went home that night and I thought about it and I was like, he's right. Because like for my whole life, like high school especially and early on in Loyola, it was like I guess high school I hit and pitch. So it was like if I didn't go 6 or 7 innings and one run and hit for two RBIs, it's like we weren't winning that game. So it's like if I got in the spot in a big moment, like a walk was out of my mind. Like I'm gonna go up there and either swing at bad pitches, like I'm gonna have it come on me. And that was like my mindset. And it was a horrible mindset. Same thing at Loyola early on too. It was like in my head, I was like, if I don't get it done, then it's like
Nobody will. Yeah.
yeah. So like I'm going out there and like it wasn't like a pressure thing. It was like me trying to do too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like those two things in that conversation. Like I sat back on it and like thought about it and then changed like a lot of what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a big moment for me. That conversation. I don't even know if he knows about that, but even to
Yeah.
this, like the whole thing of like I'll take you at 30% over other people with like 100%. Like if I'm with med school, if I'm like feel horrible for a test or like whatever, like that applies. Of just
Yeah.
being able to compete and like do well when you don't feel your best.
Yeah. 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 And I'm gonna add something from like the Kennedy wisdom, but
Yeah.
once we pass that, I do want to talk about where like kind of where your mindset then shifted to,
Yeah.
and how you like where you moved towards. But before we get there, I do want to add a little bit of Kennedy wisdom because that guy always had something positive to say. Like there were so many tidbits that he gave us. Such an incredible coach, and I'll have him on the podcast later on. I'm excited to get him on and get some of his insights and wisdom. But yeah, he always had some really incredible stuff to say. And I remember kind of same thing. He probably doesn't even remember, saying it or know how much of an impact it had on me. But that last outing that I pitched was last game of the season, regional, extra innings, big moment. I think he came in with, was it men on first and second or second and third? I think it was men on second and third and 2-3-4 up. Tie ball game. Was it bottom of the 10th? And I came in, big moment, not a great chance that we were going to get out of it, no outs. And I remember the words he said to me. He said, "When you're in a shitstorm, the only way out of it is to take it one pitch at a time." And little did he know all the stuff that was about to go on in my life, and my dad getting sick, and just a lot of things going on. Obviously, we got out of that inning and, had a great run there at the end. Didn't work out at the end. They got a couple, crappy hits in the bottom of the 13th and beat us. But 100%, like that's the way to do it. If you take it one pitch at a time, one moment at a time, you can get through anything. And with everything that kind of followed, just in life, and everything, I've been able to take that mindset, and I don't know, it makes such a profound impact on how you look at the world and how you get through hard things. If you just take it one moment at a time, it's significantly more manageable, both physically and, psychologically, mentally. You're able to handle things a lot easier, a lot better, because then things start to kind of happen and work out, and you don't burn out so easily looking so far ahead. So another piece of Kennedy wisdom there that I found was one of the most probably profound moments of my life, that, getting a piece of wisdom there. But back to kind of what you were talking about. Let's talk about where the mindset shifted to. You kind of talked about where you were and that you needed to change it. But let's talk about then, what did your mindset shift to? What were the thoughts? What were the things that you were trying to do and all that with the clutch part and the feel?
I guess it's kind of two parts of that. So I guess I'll do like the routine part first. So it's like I always, before that, like my hitting routine would be, I did like a ton of front toss and just like take like 100 swings off a front toss and just hammer balls to the back of the net and like feel good and like think that's a good day. But it's like that doesn't, I feel like a lot of young hitters do that too. Where like they'll hit off the tee, they'll hit front toss, like a couple rounds of BP and like feel good and like that's it. But like I feel like every other sport, like you practice exactly how you play. So like basketball, you're gonna do like a 5-on-5, like you're competing. Football, like you're running routes against other dudes, like you're competing. But baseball, like for hitters, like you're not really hitting in like a competitive situation. So it's like, all right, how do I close that gap from like practicing hitting to like let it translate in the field to like competing? So like I shortened up my like, it's like I would just take it down to like 5 swings of like do the same exact thing every day. I would do 5 like bat on the band to like get my feels, 5 front toss with like top hand, bottom hand. I had the PVC pipe that I really liked, and then 5 more of just like hanging and like off a front toss, and that was it. And then after that, like 1 round of regular BP, and then have someone like do counts and have someone basically pitch to me from a BP distance and like get my butt kicked. But it's like you're competing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
That's real. That's the game.
exactly. So instead of like leaving every day like feeling great, like I might leave. Well, like in my head now, like I'm mature enough to know that like that's gonna make me better. But like
Mm-hmm.
have someone absolutely carving me from 15 feet away. But like I'm seeing you have a count in my mind. I have an idea of what I want to do, and I'm seeing different spin. They're throwing hard. The ball's getting on me. So it's like being okay with failing in practice and like making practice harder than the game translates more to
Mm-hmm.
actually competing. You know.
Yeah, because then when you get to the game, you've done it a million times before.
Exactly. And it slows
Exactly.
it
It's
more.
nothing different. Yeah, yeah, definitely. That makes a huge difference. And that's something we will talk about with pitchers too, of like, and I'll try to incorporate with my athletes, and I incorporated when I was playing, is instead of, and this is something too that I learned with Bruce and Kay when they came in, that I got a little bit better about implementing, is instead of, and we were just talking about this on an earlier episode of the pod, I think the first episode of the podcast, is instead of like your typical pitcher bullpen, you'll see they'll go 5 fastballs, 5 curveballs, 5 sliders, 5 changeups, 5 fastballs, and call it.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll throw 1 count at the end, right? And when you're doing that, ultimately, that's not game like. When are you going to throw like 5 of the same pitch, 5 of the same pitch, 5 of the same pitch? You're probably not that focused. You're probably not that locked in. You're probably not thinking about spots as much. You're not in that competitive mindset.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I shifted to, and what I'll do with my athletes is we'll throw in from the beginning. We're not just working counts. Sometimes we'll throw counts in, but also we're going back and forth, seeing how are we going to play the pitches off of each other, right? For me, when I would play, I was a big 2-seam slider guy. So a lot of my bullpens, unless I was working on something different specifically, a lot of my bullpens were, how do I go from fastball to slider and back from slider to fastball and do it effectively and tunnel and hit that well? How do I, start throwing in at the end of that last season? I figured out the changeup. How do I start throwing that in and working that? And then I would start throwing in counts. Sometimes we'd do heckle bullpens where, you'd have a guy on the side just kind of heckling you, talking crap, just to get you, having to really lock in with those distractions. And then, of course, talk a lot about like really being present. A lot of guys will just go into their work and they're just throwing to throw, as opposed to everything. They're really intentional about what they're doing. They have thought with every movement they're making. They're feeling where their body is, not to a place where they're attributing too much emotion to it. And then it's, a roller coaster of emotions. You do a good pitch and you're excited about it. You do a bad pitch and now it's doming you up, in a way that you're just paying attention to the data that you're being given from your body, from the result of where the pitch was, what it looked like, the movement, and you're taking that data for what it is. You're not attributing more value than it has, but you're not attributing less value than it has. Yeah. It's valuable, but it's not, make or break. All it is information that tells you, where to go, what changes you need to make, what adjustments you need to make. Was that good? Was that not? And not attributing emotion to it, kind of separating yourself from that. And that's hard to do. It's very hard to do. Yeah. So one of the common things that a lot of athletes feel at the end of their careers is that they wish they would have learned certain lessons earlier than they did. That's definitely something that I struggled with a lot. I learned a lot, and I, got a lot out of my career, more than I think a lot of people thought I could. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of things that I learned late in my career that sometimes I think back and I'm like, man, if I would have learned that earlier, maybe I could have gotten a little bit more out of myself. And so what are the most valuable lessons you learned along the way that are important for young athletes to know before it's too late? And obviously those are a couple lessons we just talked about, but anything else?
Yeah. I think, especially for younger athletes, like I know, so my first year back after the injury, I felt like in my head was like all about me. Just because like I had gone through a lot and I was so ready to get back and like wanted to do well. But I feel like when you put like when you have the only thing in your mind is like win, like for the team, like your individual success will be better than it ever could, anything you try to do like on your own. So I think like having, or like also trying to make other guys around you better. Like when you have the team in mind, you will be better than anything you could do on your own. So I think that's definitely one thing I had like later on, especially after Kennedy came, just like with the culture that he created and everything we had going on, where like that was my main focus, help me personally, like get to levels that I could have never got to on my own.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I felt the same way. Like obviously first 3 years of college, I felt like I always had good starts to the year. And then like midway through the season, I guess we'd kind of like, chances of doing well would drop. And then I felt like I would kind of burn out because I was putting a lot on myself and I was focused on me and my performance and whether that was going to get me to the next level or not. And I was kind of gripping so tight to me having to perform well, and I would burn out. Second half of the season wouldn't be good. Those last couple of years, and especially the last year, we had a full season. felt like I felt the fruits of it, where I was able to let go of how my performance was and what that meant for my career, and seeing myself less as I'm Alex, the baseball player, and more as I'm Alex, who does all these great things, but I also happen to play baseball and love competing.
Yeah.
And then when I was able to separate myself from that, I was able to go out there and just compete and enjoy competing and be part of the team. And, I mean, the big thing I would always tell myself is like, give the people what they want. And it wasn't about me. It was about, my brothers and our fans, our families, the team. And I felt like I was able to, I was peaking in the playoffs, and that was because I didn't burn out. I was able to just lock in, go out there, enjoy the game and compete. And it wasn't about me. I was giving the people what they wanted, It makes a difference, man. It makes a difference.
Yeah. It's also like, if you're ever like, you should never be upset after a loss. Like if your team wins and say you suck, like you won. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, be happy. Like there's not more frustrating than like you win and like there's that one person that's like pissed off. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, like,
Come on. Well, we
yeah,
all got to pull in the right direction, right? Like,
wait till you get home, regroup, look at what you need to do, come back the next
exactly.
day about it. And
Exactly. And I think that's something too that, I think that's so valuable. And so a lot of people don't understand it. Like sometimes, we would lose a game and I would throw well or whatever. And I'd be pissed. And people would be like, dude, what's your deal, bro? You shoved or whatever. Um, and at the end of the day, like, I don't know, the mindset I've always kind of taken is, I feel like my first few years at Loyola, I lost it a little bit because we were losing so often,
yeah,
which it really sucks. But the mindset that I've taken, that I think is really important for young athletes to understand is like, and sometimes maybe I was a little hard on myself every once in a while, but my mindset was always, even if I did well and we lost, I should have done even more.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's about the team. And even if I did poorly and we won, we won. At the end of the day, I did enough to contribute to help us win. Obviously, if there was nothing that I did well, like, okay, yeah, back to the drawing board.
yeah,
And obviously, there's always, doesn't matter whether you win or lose, there's always information for you to take and improve upon. That was one of the things I loved about our meetings the day after games with the pitching staff and the catchers. Is just taking that, what did I do well, what did I not do well, and how am I going to improve that? I thought that was really, really valuable for everybody involved. And then a lot of guys, they kind of plateau or get worse throughout the season because they're just kind of going through the season.
yeah,
But I think that's a really important mindset to have, is like, it's team first, right? Your performance is, how did the team do and did I contribute to it? Not, oh, I did well, but the team lost, screw the team, like whatever. I'm more important. And I think it's so much easier to sustain that when you're locked in on the team, because you don't burn out so easily, and there's not so much pressure on yourself, or and I've always found that it was much easier for me to focus and lock in for games when I was thinking about give the people what they want than when I was thinking about like, I need to do well, because I don't know, when you're working towards something bigger than yourself, I feel like it's so much easier to really, really, be locked in and focus,
sure. It's not sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough, man. It's tough. And so a big part of those mindset shifts was the culture change we had at Loyola. Obviously, we had one of the most historic, and for the listeners who don't know, we went from being one of the worst programs in the country, Alan and I's third year at Loyola, to our fourth year, the COVID season, starting the season off being one of the better teams in the country. And then the fifth year, when we had our first full season back from COVID, we were a top 10 team in the country. And so obviously a lot of that was a culture shift. We did bring in some pieces, but I felt like most of our talent was guys that we already had. We didn't have a huge change in talent. And we were able to make a lot of big changes based on, the culture that we took to the field and how we worked and where we were as a team, and everybody pulling in the right direction. So what's your perspective on that culture shift that we made? And what were the key things that made that happen?
I think without saying anything bad about like the first half, I felt like the biggest change was like the accountability from the coaching staff that came like early on. And then like everybody saw that and like started holding each other accountable. And that was like the big, like you said, like we did bring in pieces, but you saw guys that were there that didn't do well just like start having a lot of success out of nowhere. And you're like,
Mhm.
who is this guy? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So, you know, some people can get that out of themselves. Like they're disciplined enough to like get the best out of themselves, but some people need like those other people around them, or like a hard coach on them, people around them. And like you saw guys that needed that start to perform like better than you ever thought they could.
Mhm.
That was really cool to see. But that fall was fun because you just saw like every day was like a competition with like
Yeah.
each other and like people with themselves too. Like you saw
Yeah.
guys not cutting anything short on like reps in the gym, swings after practice. The biggest thing was like because like we would work out and then people would go hit on their own after, and it's like the first couple of years like no one really did anything in the
Yeah,
fall.
guys were showing up early and leaving. I mean, showing up late and leaving early, and then the culture shifted, and it was the total opposite. You go to the field 2, 3 hours early, guys were already there, starting to get work in. And then you'd be there an hour plus after practice, and guys were still there getting to work. And I was hitting fungo to a bunch of guys who were just having a good time. And I felt like we enjoyed the game better because of it. We were
Sure.
at the field having fun, really enjoying our lives. I felt like my first few years, it was really hard to enjoy baseball, and that was a culture problem. And obviously it's not fun when you're losing. Um, but yeah, definitely.
Hard work is contagious too because it's like you see a couple guys show up to the field early and they're hitting when you show up and you're like, damn, these guys are doing this like
Yeah.
something I
Oh,
did too.
yeah.
And then a couple more people start coming, and next thing you know, like an hour before we start practice, we have basically the whole team there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, man. That was a lot of fun. And it was great because, I tried my best to like work as hard as I could in those years prior. But dude, it's hard, man. It's so hard when you don't have other people around you. I was lucky that I had Larry, kind of grinding it out with me, and it's such a great throwing partner and training partner. But man, it's tough, dude. It's tough to sustain that when you have so many people around you that aren't putting in the same kind of work. Those last couple of years, man, it was so easy to grind and then be elevated even more so, man, because there were a lot of things that I felt like I was working my butt off. And then come those years, I realized like, man, I gotta lock this in even more. I gotta, yeah, I was working hard, but I wasn't working that hard. I can elevate it another level. And it makes it a lot easier when you have guys around you that are pushing you and doing the exact same thing and have the same mindset, and you can learn from. Because ultimately, one of my favorite parts about that culture shift was the first few years. I started doing a lot of the new age training stuff earlier than most people.
Yeah.
And so, I'd be doing like the weighted ball stuff, drills, like whatever, med ball throws. I'd be hitting the Mark Pro. And then I'd kind of get a little bit of scrutiny from it. Guys would kind of give me some crap and make fun of me. And then those last couple of years, I felt like it was so much easier, so much more fun, and so much easier to learn, because instead of that, I was having conversation with guys and learning things from guys, and other guys were learning new stuff too that I, hadn't come across. And I was getting, we were kind of picking each other's brains, and everything was working together. And I felt like it was so much more fun to work when you're in a culture like that, that everybody is trying to learn and elevate themselves and find, because, ultimately everybody has an individual routines and individual things that are going to help them, because everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, and their bodies move differently. They work differently. They respond differently to different stimuli. And so everybody's kind of coming up with their own routines and their own individualized way to train and prepare themselves for competition. But we were also able to kind of pick things from each other, try things out in our routine, incorporate different things, and find what worked for ourselves. And I thought that was awesome. That was a really fun part of it.
Yeah. I think it's cool too. Like when you show up to the field, like early on, like first couple of years, you show up to the field and like you're in the dugout and dude's up to bat and you're like, this dude was out till 3 in the morning last night.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
feel that across like the whole dugout. Like there's no like confidence, and it also makes you feel bad too because like I'm working this hard, but no one else around me is doing
yeah.
anything.
It's harder to work, man.
Versus like you're in the dugout, there's a dude up, and you're like, all right, I've seen this dude work his butt off for 9 months before this. Like I have faith in him, and you feel that in the air. It gives
Yeah,
everybody confidence, and
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the biggest thing talk about in that sense is, I was living with Gabe that last year.
Yeah.
I would get up to go to the bathroom and take a piss at like 3 a.m. And my bathroom actually was Larry's bathroom in his room. So I'd have to walk through Larry's room to get to the bathroom. New Orleans houses, man. and there was a door that also connected to Gabe's room. And I would hear him at like 3 a.m. watching the games of the team we were about to face, studying, like locking in. And that made it so much easier to be on the mound and be like, all right, Gabe, whatever the hell you say, I'm throwing it. And I'm
He's got,
throwing it with so much confidence. I don't think I mean, I say this all the time. I didn't shake him off a single time that entire season. So I had so much confidence in him. He's also such a great mind behind the plate.
yeah.
I mean, that's a pro mind back there. But he put in so much work, and that gave me so much confidence to throw everything with conviction. And then I didn't have to think up there. It was just like lock in and compete. And yeah, you tell me what to do, and we're locked in and we're going. Of course, we have conversations before I'd go in, or in the dugout in between, where I'd say, hey, this is feeling good. Let's throw more of that. Or hey, I feel like this is working well off each other. Incorporate that. But it wasn't like, hey, I want to throw this to this guy in this count. It was like, this is what I'm feeling. Gabe, I trust you. You tell me what to do with that information.
Yeah.
Because I knew that he was putting in so much work to study for every game that it made it so easy. And when you have a guy like that and you're able to trust that deeply because of the work, that works for everybody, right? It makes it so much easier, right? Like for you, a hitter, you go out there and you know that the guy behind you, Peyton Lacoste probably,
Yeah.
was locked in for the last however many months, focused, working his butt off. It's like, all right, I don't have to do so much anymore because I can just pass the baton, and I know he's going to get a good shot at getting a job done.
Yeah.
And it just makes life so much easier, man, to go out there and do your thing.
Yeah. That kind of goes back to, I guess, like that two-part question earlier of like what, like the clutch thing that changed, or like the big moment thing. I think the biggest thing was like trusting the guys around me. And so I barely walked my first couple of years. Like I was like terrified to walk versus my last year. I think I was either second or third in the NAIA in walks. So like, first of all, like what that does to a pitcher as a hitter, I guess, like if you throw like your best slider an inch off the plate and I just spit on it, like I'm not like, don't even hesitate
Yeah.
to, you're like, oh shit. Like,
The zone becomes the size of a golf ball.
exactly. And then it makes the pitcher feel more pressure to like throw strike.
Yeah, man.
And if
Yeah.
it's the first at bat of the game and I take a 6 pitch walk, it's like that plays later on in the game where if there's runners on and you have to throw strikes, then it's like,
Mhm.
hey, you're thinking more in the back of your head, like I have to get the ball over the plate, you hang something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, totally. I talk about it a lot, like the pitcher hitter battle. Baseball is a very interesting team sport because it consists of a bunch of one-on-one battles between a pitcher and a hitter. I love that aspect of baseball because it's team but also individual, and it's a personal battle. I love that. And so I talk a lot about how the winner of that battle almost always is the person who's more comfortable, because hitting, and you could say it, hitting is so much more comfort, so much more easy, and so much easier when you're comfortable.
Yeah,
Pitching is so much easier when you're comfortable. And then the opposite, when you're uncomfortable, it doesn't matter how bad your opponent is. It's so hard. And I felt like that was one of the things I took a lot of pride in, and one of the reasons why I was able to kind of outperform my ability a little bit is because I took a lot of pride in making hitters uncomfortable and having a demeanor up there and a presence that
yeah,
made guys uncomfortable. I worked fast. I had confidence. And so my stuff may not have been that great, and I may not have, blown guys by with a mid-90s fastball, but I was able to get guys uncomfortable. And it's hard to hit when you're uncomfortable, and it's hard to pitch when you're uncomfortable. And
yeah,
so that's a big part of it, man. Like if you're able to just spit on a pitch that's an inch off the plate, a ball off the plate, and take it, as a pitcher, you're thinking, oh shit, like this guy sees everything, And now you have to go with a fastball on the plate. And it's tough, man. It's tough. And the weapons that you have, they don't work as well, right? Like if a guy's swinging at something off the plate, then it's like, oh, there you go, boom. Now you're a little antsy. You're on your front foot a little bit more. I can play with you a little bit more. But when a hitter's just locked in and they just see it, you're like, oh shit, a little bit, you know? It's tough. It's a big part of it.
There was so much like you said, what y'all did with the pitchers of like having those meetings and stuff. Like we would have the charts and like we would watch video on whoever we were seeing that weekend. So it's like when you go unprepared like that, it's a game changer. Like if I know like what you're trying to do to me and like what your best pitch is, then like I have so much more of an advantage than just like going up there and hitting.
Yeah, totally. Totally, man. Because at the end of the day, like when you have an approach like that, where you're looking for something and you know to spit on something else or whatever, and you're able to eliminate pitches, like as a pitcher, there were times that there was a pitch, it didn't matter what I like, for example, my changeup. I was never throwing my changeup for a strike. I wasn't going to do it because when I throw it for a strike, it gets rocked, right? Because now I'm throwing a pitch that will kind of drop right into the middle of the zone. I'm trying to hit the back of the plate or just behind the back of the plate with it, because it's starting in the zone and looking like a nice meaty fastball and then diving out of the plate. If a hitter knows that and they're able to identify the changeup early and say, all right, like I'm spitting on the changeup every time I see it, like that eliminates a pitch for me. I can't throw it, right? And now if I do throw it and you're spitting on it, you're ahead in the count, you're starting to get more comfortable. I'm forced to throw you pitches that are easier to hit in the zone, you know, more on the plate. It totally changes the game. Whereas if I'm able to just play with you because you don't have an approach and you're not eliminating pitches and I can throw you whatever, I mean, it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. Especially from a hitter's perspective too. I guess one thing I learned like as I matured was like obviously every time I go to the plate, I want like a middle end fastball that I can just demolish over the left field wall. But it's like you're not going to get that. So it's like you have to take whatever's given to you. So it's like if you like early on, I would not swing at first pitch off speed pitches, and like I guess pitchers like knew that too. It's like I just down in the count every single time.
Yeah.
Like my last, I guess 2.5 years. Like if you were people would try to get ahead of me with like first pitch curveball, first pitch slider, just over the plate. So it's like once I started pulling the trigger on that, then it's like okay, then you have to start working harder because you can't just do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then everyone would pepper me away, and like okay, I know that they're going to try to throw me away early in the count. So it's like I'm looking away early in the count, and once I get up, then I eliminate the outside half, and I'm looking for like what I want.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I specifically remember you having that conversation during VP while I was hitting fungo. That was one of the things I love doing as a pitcher. Pitchers, if you want to learn, learn how to hit fungo, because then you'll just sit there while guys are hitting VP and just listen into conversations. You learn so much about approaches and then you can learn how to, how to defend from different hitter approaches or attack different hitters' approaches. But I specifically remember you having that conversation. I don't know if it was with Peyton or Squid or both of them or what. But I specifically remember you talking about like learning how to swing at off speeds early. And man, who was it? I think it was Squid that was saying like, dude, they're going to give you a get me over curveball early in the count, middle. Like that's a pitch to mash. And I remember you having that revelation being like, yeah, it's right. I'm going to swing at those.
yeah.
And that's a game changer, man, because those are easy pitches to hit if you see them and you know they're coming.
Yeah, it's like that might be the best pitch I get the whole at bat too. Because like you throw that, it's 0-1. You throw another good pitch, I'm down 0-2, and it's like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. It's a game changer. It's a game changer. And if you look at like splits between different accounts of batting average, it's like what a difference it makes to be ahead in the count, man. It totally changes the game. Totally changes the game.
Just like what you said too about like being around the hitters, like that's definitely because you and me used to talk all the time about like I would be like, what are you trying to do as a pitcher? You'd be like, what is your mindset as a hitter? And just trying to like, ping pong off of that. So like what we can do when we're in the game, just learning from each other. I think it's really valuable.
Yeah. For anybody young listening to this, man, that's such a big part of learning. Get with the hitters, especially the good hitters that have approaches that are always thinking, always working to improve their craft. Get with them and start talking about what your approach is, what their approach is, what you can do to be a better pitcher, what they see from you, what makes them uncomfortable. Learn what makes hitters uncomfortable, what makes pitchers uncomfortable, what makes it hard to hit, what makes it hard to pitch. and just have those conversations. The other thing I used to do too is when I'd be shagging, if I wasn't hitting fungo, when I'd be shagging, I'd go over and hang out by the middle infielders. And one, I'd ask them about fielding because I took a lot of pride in being able to field my position as a pitcher, and maybe take a couple ground balls and try to stay athletic. But I just talk and learn, ask them about hitting approaches, what I can do to make them better, what they're seeing from me, what, especially in the fall when you're doing a lot of inter squads and you're you're facing guys, like that's such a great opportunity to ask guys about what your stuff looks like and what is difficult for them to pick up and what is easy for them to pick up, and what pitches work well off of each other and what pitches don't work well off of each other, and what your tempo is like, what your demeanor looks like, if you're making them uncomfortable or if you're making them comfortable, all that stuff, man, because there's so much you can learn just by having conversations with hitters, because they're seeing it from the perspective of your opponent, right? And so if you can get the perspective of your opponent, it totally changes the way that you can train and how much you can learn about yourself and what you need to get better at. Yeah. So moving on, when you got to Loyola, I remember you came in as a two-way player and you're planning to pitch. For those who don't know, Alan back then, he was pretty gross as a pitcher. I remember the couple pens I got to see him throw, he had some pretty good stuff. And so unfortunately, he ended up tearing his labrum in the fall of his freshman year, missed that season, went through surgery, and rehabbed. So tell me about that labrum tear, your rehab experience, the hardest parts of it, how you got through it, and how you managed to put such a legendary career together afterwards.
That's a story time. So if you were to ask me like when I came into Loyola, like I was a pitcher who could hit. Like pitching was like my thing, which is crazy to say now for like anybody who like knew me at the end of my career. But that was like I wanted to be a two-way, but like pitching was like if I had to pick one, like I thought that like as my career went on, like I would have been just a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to Loyola. I think it was the first weekend we went on that retreat. So like first weekend on campus, we go on a retreat and we're playing dodgeball, and got a little competitive, threw a dodgeball as hard as I could, and like I felt the pop, and I was like, oh, that's probably nothing. And then I woke up the next morning and I like couldn't move my arm, and I didn't tell anybody. I kept practicing on it for I think like 2 or 3 weeks. Just it was horrible, so much pain. Finally told somebody, figured out it was torn, and then tried to rehab it throughout the fall, and it just didn't really work that way. And then in January, when got a second opinion, decided to get the surgery. But I remember in the fall too, like talking to Fast and Turnage and Cal and all them, like they wanted me to just DH that year and try to like wait the next year to get the surgery. And I'm so glad that I didn't
Yeah.
too. Because like that would have put me back at like so that sophomore year I would have had the surgery and it would have put everything back.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the hardest year of my life because like you're so excited going in as a freshman and then getting that taken away. Like the first week, like I knew I was like, this is not good. Like I'm screwed. And then I was also living at home that year and like being away from the team, everybody would be gone. So like I was kind of just like on my own in a sling, rolling backpack around campus. I know Alex remembers that. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of videos from that.
That rolling backpack, man.
Yeah. But so like once I started the rehab sucks because it's like you're doing it all on your own. Like I was doing it at Oshner, I was away from the team, but it's like you appreciate every little step that you have along the way. So it's like you're in the sling and it's like okay, like you start squeezing a ball, and then like you move your arm like 10 degrees, and like each step is like such a big. It seems so simple to someone who's healthy, but like each step is such like a big feat. And I remember I came out of the rehab still trying to do both, and I kind of hit a wall when I got to, I think it was like 50 yards. Like was good throwing, good throwing, good throwing. And I just once I got to 50 yards, like I could not get past that without pain. And then ultimately decided like, all right, like I can hit. Let's do this. I'll hang up pitching, maybe come back to it later, but I'm all in on hitting, and that's kind of what started that. But I learned so much from that, like how to appreciate. I appreciated everything a lot more for sure. Like not being healthy gives you a perspective on everything that you do. Like each day after that, you go to the field and like you're just thankful to be healthy and competing.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely, man. You see it with a lot of guys, and luckily now I've been able to be around a lot of pro rehabs. And you see it with a lot of guys, man. You learn so much from the rehab process, and guys come back like totally different people with such different approaches to how they compete and how they look at the game and all that stuff. And I think a lot of it is that you're forced to build like a structured routine and celebrate those steps along the way. But a lot of it too is like you go through so many obstacles psychologically
Yeah.
um, in the rehab process. It's tough, man. It's tough because there's so many obstacles. You get little setbacks here. You want to be back. Sometimes you feel great, but you're not ready to make the step that you think that you're ready to make the step to. And so you gotta, kind of hold yourself back a little bit. And it's hard, man. It's hard. You want to be back out there. You're not with the team. You want to compete. You're watching guys compete. It's tough. It's not easy.
The mental side of it's probably the hard. That's the side that no one really like. Everybody learns how to, especially like in school. Like you're a physical therapist. I'm in school right now to be like a surgeon. I want to do orthopedic surgery, but it's like you learn how to physically put somebody back together. But it's like the mental part's kind of like on them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's
I
hard,
remember
man.
there was one moment. It was like probably like 2 months into the rehab, and I was just like sitting on my couch at home watching MLB Network, and it was like a video of David Cohn throwing a perfect game, and I just like complete breakdown, just like out of nowhere, like crying, like lost it. And
Yeah.
it was like the low moment because I was like, what if I never pitch again? And then it ended up being true, but like, yeah, I had a different perspective on it though because I still had that other tool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's tough, man. It's tough. And you know, one of the things that I appreciated that I thought was awesome that the Guardians do really well is when they have a great mental performance team. Some really awesome sports psychologists over there that work with their guys and really, build those relationships with the rehab guys and kind of keep a good, conversation and communication going and kind of lift them up and build them up. One of the things they do a lot is they'll take guys who previously went through the rehab process, especially some of the kind of older, veterans or guys who are more mature, really the pros, and they'll connect them with some of those younger guys that are kind of going through the rehab process. Um, and help kind of help them get through it, right? So like Anthony Ghost is one of the guys that it's kind of been through the rehab process in the past. UCL, he had like some other stuff. Um, he's an awesome dude, and he's a great dude, and he's a great storyteller. He's a phenomenal guy, one of the funnest guys I've been around ever. And they'll throw Anthony Ghost. Well, Anthony Ghost stays around himself, but they'll connect Anthony Ghost with a lot of the younger guys going through the rehab process and make sure that they're just give them encouragement, and make sure that they know that they're in a good spot and they're going to get through it and that those little setbacks or feelings are all normal. They'll kind of try to connect, like if there's a couple rehab guys that one is more of a pro and the other one is a little more immature, they'll connect those guys together, have them throw together and hope that they kind of rub off, the more mature guy rubs off on the more immature guy. And kind of do things like that to make sure that they're all kind of in a good spot mentally and they're all connected and they're all feeling good. And because it's hard, man. It's really hard when you have something that you've done your entire life and done it well, and it's such a big like central part of who you are as a person. And you strip that away from you for a year or more, it's really hard, man, especially the competing part of it, man. And it's almost like retiring, right? Like when my baseball career ended, it was a tough transition to like real life, and not competing and not having that brotherhood around me. And rehab is like that, man. It's really hard to kind of transition into, all right, I'm hurt and I'm not traveling with the team anymore. I'm not around the guys as much. I'm going through all this. And there's always those doubts in your head of like, am I going to be the same when I come back? But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's not easy.
that's kind of what COVID was like, because like I'd come back from that like still in my head. I'm like, all right, I'm like I want to play pro ball, and then like COVID happened, and like that summer I was supposed to play in the Valley League, and like the team I was on had won the summer before, and they take a bunch of like SEC, ACC freshmen, and then they'll take like one or two like older guys from like a smaller school who like are good at baseball and then also like smart. So I was supposed to do like an internship program at like University of Virginia too, and like that got canceled as well. And I was like, all right, like this can get taken away from me at any second. Like like I'm Alan the baseball player. Like who else am I? Like
Mhm.
I can't just be a baseball player. And it really made me think like about like what it was about baseball that like made me the way I was, and kind of like life later on. It kind of like took some pressure off too, because it's like, all right, like I go back, it's all about the team. Like if I continue to play, great. If not, then like I'm gonna make sure that I do everything I can to where like I don't regret a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. I think there's so much. That was a big reason why I felt like I had a better year that last year. Especially like that during that COVID break, that was a longer break away from the team and away from competing. I felt like I learned so much about like who I was as an individual,
Yeah,
and that I wasn't like baseball, but baseball was something that I enjoyed and loved and was, I mean, ultimately good at, right? And so going back to competing, it was more about having fun and competing and enjoying those battles and having that personal competition with the hitter in front of you, and less about, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to, get the velo, I need to improve, I need to play pro ball because I don't know what I am without this game. And I
yeah,
was able to just go out there and enjoy it, man. And when you're just going out there enjoying it, competing, locked in, focused, and doing it for your brothers around you, it's so much easier to compete. It's so much easier to be successful.
yeah.
Yeah. So now you're in medical school, and I'm sure you're just soaking up knowledge like a sponge being hit with a tsunami. Um, and so if there's anything valuable you've learned now during your experience in med school, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with this. Like a bunch of people, whether it's like really young, like high school seniors, or like people juniors in colleges, juniors and seniors in college, like you start getting to that point where you're like, oh my God, what am I gonna do with my life? Like just enjoy, work your butt off every day in baseball and enjoy the game, because it translates to so much more in real life. Like if you actually, like the pitch by pitch thing you said earlier that Kennedy talked about, like that applies to everything. It's like if you can do that with baseball, it applies to real life. It's like right now I'm in school, and the best way that everybody describes medical school is like trying to drink out of a fire hose, where it's just
Yeah,
there's nothing that's
there you
that
go.
it's just the amount of information. So it's like
Yeah,
I'll be sitting on my computer, and I'm like, I have a test, and there's 600 PowerPoint slides in front of me, and I have to know it all in like 2 days.
tell me
And it's
about it, man.
easy to get overwhelmed, but it's like, okay, like you start thinking about like, oh, how am I gonna get this done? It's like silence all that and just start, just do it, one slide at a time, one chapter at a time, and then like it builds up.
Mhm.
Another thing too is like, it's like I just finished my first year of school. I want to do orthopedic surgery. I'm 1 year into a 10-year journey. And it's like it's very easy to get lost in that number. And it's like I feel like a lot of people with a lot of stuff in life, you're like, I'll be happy when this happens.
Here, yeah.
And nothing changes. So it's like it's something you say a lot too, embracing the suck. Or like how to embrace the journey and take it one day at a time, and like enjoy whatever situation you're in, knowing that it'll get something better later on.
Mhm.
Baseball definitely helped me with all that.
Yeah,
And
man.
we test twice a week, which is it can be a lot. And it's like I might get demolished by something on Tuesday and then have another one coming up on Friday. Same thing as baseball. You play a bunch of games during the week, forget about one, move on to the next one.
Definitely. Definitely, man. And that's a big part of life. You mentioned being able to enjoy kind of where you're at and not be thinking about the next thing. And that's something that I've struggled with a lot and that I'm working on right now, man. Is it's so easy to think about the future and to be planning ahead. Especially like in times like this. I mean, we've both been in school, and it's a grind, man, and it's not easy. And so that's something that I've struggled with a lot, is like, okay, when I get to this point, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm going to this and that. But when you're able to just look at the beautiful things around you, wherever you are, whatever situation you're in, whatever season of life that you're in, life gets so much better. And that was something that even during my baseball career, I struggled with a lot. especially in those early years of college, is I always thought like halfway through the season, I'd already be thinking about the next year. And that's
Yeah.
probably one of the reasons why I would kind of fall off halfway through the year and not have such great second halves. Is I was already thinking about, okay, next year we'll be competitive. In the off season, this is what I'm going to do to train. In the off season, I'm going to get this velo, and next year I'm going to be better. And instead of just enjoying now and taking it one day at a time, one moment at a time, and being present where I am, it's a game changer, not just in baseball, but in life. If you're able to be present, not only are you going to be better at what you're doing, but you're not going to burn out so easily. You're going to be happier. You're going to be able to, look outside and enjoy the sunshine, go outside for a walk every once in a while, smell. One of the things I learned my last year, that year right after COVID, is like going to the field. I felt like before that, I was always going to the field and it was like, okay, I have, and not that I didn't have a purpose. I had definitely had a purpose that last year, in my training and what I was focused on. But I felt like I was in such a rush always to get my things done and check everything off the list. And, that last year I learned to go to the field, get there early, and, enjoy the sounds, the smells, the conversations, the freshly cut grass, the sights, just the camaraderie, hitting fungo, like all that stuff. And, I just enjoyed it so much more. And I was able to compete so much easier. And I was so much happier. And ultimately, when you're happier, you're just in so much a better headspace, and you're so much more locked in. And not to mention like the horrible effects that stress has on your body, and how that can affect performance, and how that can affect recovery, how that affects building muscle. I mean, cortisol destroys your muscle growth. And so like there's so much to that. If you're happy and enjoying, and obviously you have to have a plan, and you got to be locked in, and you have to be intentional about everything you're doing. But if you're stressing yourself out every single day and you're not present in the moment and just enjoying the beautiful things around you, like things are going to suffer.
Yeah. It's always harmful to think too far ahead, because like there's a bunch of the games that we lost that were like bad losses that we shouldn't have lost were midweeks before a big series. And it's like everybody's head is already on, say it's Faulkner during the week and we play Spring Hill on Tuesday. And it's like you drop the game because you were thinking ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
It goes
Definitely, man. That's so valuable. That's so valuable. Where are you in this pitch? One of the things that I struggled with a lot early in my college career is that I would be thinking about 5 pitches down the line, 10 pitches down the line, rather than thinking about the pitch I was about to make.
Yeah.
Thinking about how I was going to set the guy up. And of course you have to have a plan, but I think having Gabe helped me out a lot that last year, because I was able to kind of just trust his plan. But you have to be fully locked in and convicted on the pitch you're throwing, and totally confident in it, totally focused on it. And then the next pitch, it's like, okay, what did the hitter tell me? And then how am I going to respond to that? As opposed to thinking, that's another thing too, like thinking about your plan and not being able to adjust. It's like, okay, I'm going to throw him a fastball, then I'm going to throw him this, then I'm going to throw him that, and I'm going to set him up this way and get the strike. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes the hitter's going to tell you something that's going to change your plan. Or sometimes, like if you're not focused, if you're focused 5 pitches down the line and you're not focused on the pitch you're about to throw, you're not going to be able to make a good pitch. You're going to make mistakes. And then you're going to get beat, and you're not going to get to that pitch later on. And then even bigger than that, I'd be thinking about, the next opportunity I was going to get, or when I get, this velo, I'm going to dominate, or when I have this, whatever. And just being present in the current moment and saying, okay, this is what I got right now. This is the opponent I have. This is the stuff I have. This is where I'm at. And I'm going to do everything I can with it. It's a game changer. It's a total game changer.
Yeah, it's like you get to big steps and like those big jumps by focusing on what you have to do every day. It's like these little wins build up to when you're in that big moment. Like you've done everything you can, you've prepared in every way you can, and like something crazy happens, something big happens. You do something you don't think you could have. There's no one moment that created that. It's a bunch of little ones that led up to that.
Yeah. There's a quote that I love, and I can't remember who said it, but basically it's, if you're going to build a house, you don't think I'm going to build the most badass, biggest, amazing house in the world. You say to yourself, if you want to build the most perfect house, you say to yourself, I'm going to lay this brick down so perfectly nobody's laid a brick down more perfectly than I'm about to lay this brick down. And I'll be fully locked into laying this brick down. And if you do that, thousands of times in a row, back to back, and you're constantly focused on laying the brick down perfectly, next thing you know, you're going to have the most perfect, amazing, crazy, badass house. It's the same thing in life, man. If you're locked in on the one step that you have to take in front of you, and it goes to like detail orientedness, right? And you're focused on the details of that meticulous step by step, each step at a time, and not cutting any corners and not thinking so far ahead, but just being locked in. And I'm going to do this task that's at hand perfectly. Everything comes together. You just have to stack that together, and it's easier to manage too, right? If you're going one, like I said, like Kay said, if you're going one pitch at a time, one moment at a time, one task at a time, and you do each of those tasks fully locked in and perfectly, everything comes together.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, I think we've talked about some really awesome stuff, and I think that's a good spot to leave it. It's been great having you, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and you've always had really, really good insights and some really, really awesome stuff to add.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. That was fun. Good to talk. Good to talk about baseball, because I'm so locked into school now that I'm kind of removed from it. So it's good to bring it back a little bit.
I totally feel you, man. I was right there the 2.5 years before of PT school before I got to spend some time with the Guardians, man. Being back in it reminds you so much of what a great sport it is and what a great world it is to be a part of. But yeah, man, for all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this segment, and I hope there's a lot of stuff. I think Alan talked about some really valuable stuff. So hopefully a lot of you guys can take that information and improve your games. Stay fearless.